everyone, and welcome back to Rise and Lead Women's Leadership Perspectives. I am your host, ChèRee Wiley, founder and CEO of Diverse Perspectives, where we are dedicated to empowering growth, transforming lives, and reimagining success one client at a time. I am so excited for this episode today because today we're going to get into a conversation that is all about being authentically you. So you all know that the month of June was all about showing up in our authenticity. And one big thing that happens, especially with women in leadership, is this confusion between if we need to act like a man in order to be successful in our roles. And I personally believe that your greatest gift is you being a woman because exactly who you are, not to be like anybody else. So today I have a special guest with me, Mr. Trumane Wiley, who is my husband. And we have a lot of really deep conversations on a regular basis. So today you just get to see a glimpse into what we talk about. But he is going to give us, ladies, a little bit of insight about what a man thinks about when he's thinking about leadership, how he leads according to his purpose, and the power of us leveraging our strengths in sometimes really male dominated arenas. So, Trumane, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
So happy to have you here. So, if you would share a little bit with our audience your background and what you're contributing to the conversation today.
So, I supervise now. It's actually my sector role. Been leading in some type of most capacities for about roughly 10 years now. Um, Mostly in the church. I've had lead positions as even when I started smaller jobs when I started off. Um, I guess you could say like McDonald's and parties, stuff like that. Moved up into actual supervisor position where I actually work at now. Roughly about 4 years ago. So I've been doing that and learning the whole aspects of just guiding the people. Um, is important because in different roles that you can play as a leader, as far as me being a supervisor, you can be a counselor in one moment, um, trying to comfort somebody in another moment, giving them instructions in one setting, and training them in another setting. So it's just um, for the past, like I said, 4 years of just growing in that field and learning different ways of dealing with different personalities as well. It's been a big thing for me. Um, I believe I'm like a people's person in a way, and I try to be more down to earth as possible and just real. Um, and it's kind of hard for me to even be like anybody else. So it's kind of like it comes out. I have my kidding moments, um, serious moments, and I'm learning different ways of how to balance that out as well. So thank you for having me, and yeah, that's what I've been doing for I guess about everybody said 10 years now, but supervisor role about 4 years.
So awesome. And you brought up a lot of important points that we talk about a lot on the show. Is about how in our leadership styles we have to take on different roles and different capacities. And I definitely believe that men show up differently than women do. And so, we have this conversation about how a lot of times as women, we feel like we have to play a role, right? Like us just showing up as ourselves is not enough. We're constantly trying to prove ourselves, especially in male dominated spaces. And I know it's really interesting because the position that you're a supervisor in a space that there are a lot more women than there are men. And so just to kind of, if you could touch on or share, like, do you ever feel like you need to be anybody other than yourself? Because you mentioned that you struggle to be anybody other than you are who you are. But have you ever had a moment where you felt like I need to show up as someone other than just Trumane in those spaces?
Yes, in some cases, like I said, starting off in my supervisor role, it was more where, like I said, I went from leading, a smaller setting, to actually leading, like doing stuff in the church. And I think God was preparing me then, and then to actually doing it in my, I guess, in my second job. It was, it was kind of like a hard transition to seeing how other men and other women did their own thing. Because I was like, all right, well, maybe I should do this, or maybe I should try to handle things that way. But then more and more I got settled in my position. I I build off of things like morality, and just having people comfortable where they are and meeting them where they are, um, and that's where and in this like different things that I do, as far as like on Thursdays, like we had tropical Thursdays, so we would do things like have um, bring food, everybody pitch in, we decorate the area where the department that we work in, and we would just in that break times we would celebrate this and that, and I would just give tidbits and have our stand up talks and stuff like that. So it was just bringing a camaraderie around in that department as far as everybody being comfortable with me also, and but also comfortable with everybody else. And that gave more time to not just think about work, but having that time to socialize, to be comfortable with each other. And I think it built a better morale in that part of the building where I work in. And that kind of spread it to what people were hearing about it, to managers would come over, other supervisors would come over, and they weren't doing this. So it was like, um, it was a grand thing for me for that to happen because I was new to these like settings, right? But I became more comfortable with it because that was me, right? Because I like to serve people in one way, but in the other way, and the part of that was like I was forking out money out of my pocket, and they gave us the option to uh, utilize the company's money in a way, but it was more later down the road when they seen that I was doing it. But like I said, just building that morale so people can be comfortable in their job, and in a way, I guess you could say, letting your hair down. So that was important to me. That's always been important.
That team culture is a huge thing when we talk about the way that we lead. But I think you also hit on the fact about when we lead and we lead authentically, we bring ourselves to the environment. And so, one thing I do know about you is that those things that's your heart, that your passion is to do things to help other people, to make people feel comfortable, to create the type of culture that you want to be a part of. And your employees really respond well to that. And that is a great thing for even the artists to understand, is that when you show up authentically as yourself, you bring your perspective, your talents, your gifts to the table, then it shifts from you just having a job to you operating according to purpose. And that was one thing that came up in the previous episode, was like the importance of when we think about authenticity, are we showing up operating according to purpose? Your purpose should be intertwined with what you are doing. And a lot of times people don't understand that when we are trying to be someone else, and again, this is me as a woman leader speaking to other women, when you are trying in a position of leadership and you're trying to be someone that you're not, you are cutting off your purpose, because your purpose is directly tied to you being you. God created you to be who you are. He created Trumane to be how he is and for his heart to serve. He created ChèRee to be how I am, and the things that I bring to the table. If I am always trying to put on this image of something other than what God created me to be, then I am then stepping outside of purpose, because I can't operate into purpose if I'm doing what everybody else does. And you mentioned how people weren't doing what you were doing, and you started doing it, and then it started catching fire because you had shifted into a different mode. So you weren't just there as supervisor, you were now there as a different light that could then open the door for other people to understand the importance of what this is. So in, kind of shifting in that conversation, we know that the word of God says that we are the salt and we are the light of the world. So when we think about our role on our jobs, what does that look like? Because I think people, even when people might not think of building team morale as part of your light shine, but it is, because people come to work in places that they want to be in, right? And people are not going to want to be in a space where they don't feel comfortable, they're not excited that something is going to happen that we are looking forward to. Those are the type of things that keep people coming to work. So what other ways do you see yourself operating in the role of being salt and light of the world in the midst of your secular job?
The first thing that comes to mind is my behavior. In my position, it can definitely be testing at times. So learn, of course, being professional, but knowing how to handle yourself when things could get out of hand. With employees, with other supervisors, with management, um, just controlling whatever chaos that tries to come your way by being so. Um, just taking that time for me, meditating, constantly praying, seeking God in a way, just listening to the word, just different things like that. Just learn how to lead in a way that can bring other people to the light without saying. Just in how you speak, how you respond, you know, not being vulgar, being out of line. Um, but also, I think, like you said, just being authentic in that way, but having a mind of Christ at the same time, because everybody's watching, everybody's looking. Um, you might not feel it at the time, but I've been in situations numerous times to where supervisors, managers, employees have said, "Oh, don't do that around Trumane. Don't say that around Trumane. Oh, my bad. I apologize." And I don't really think of it as time because I've always just constantly moved like that. Now I've had a time to where I wasn't like that, but I appreciate it more even now that I am that type of life, even in the sense that I'm in now to where it can be very chaotic. But just to know that I can show the love of God in all types of ways, whether not going off or cursing at somebody or just responding better, or helping, giving a hand, serving an employee that it's not even mine. Because I work in a huge facility, right? And we have roughly around, I give it to 250 to 300 employees a night. So just knowing, and I work on night shift as well. So it's a different type of world on night shift. People not well rested. Some people are not in the right mind, just like they say a lot of things happen at night. So it's like just people a lot of times are not in the right mindset. And then a lot of situations you're dealing with people that have to take that role and be on night shift due to their outside life. Um, Single parents, other jobs, more than just that one job. So you got to think about those pressures that they're dealing with as well. And it's important that you just try to balance things out as far as like being the light, even when nobody else is, even when nobody else is. So it's that is important to me. So I try to keep that. I don't even keep that in mind, but I just try to like I think I've gotten so used to it now. So it's just like I don't think of it, I just do it. And they're like, you're so calm. And you hear about it after years and years, you're so calm, you don't react, da 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 da. Stuff like that. And then it starts you start to think on those things when you're in your own time. And then of course meditating on that to constantly stay in that type of mindset, in that type of or when it comes to dealing with difficult situations. So it's very important. It's very important.
Thank you. That response brings up a lot of different things. So one thing that we always talk about in the importance of leadership is about being very human centered. And what you're mentioning is that you consider people, even the people that you oversee, as human beings, understanding that they have lives and they have emotions, and you're dealing with all of those things. You also bring up the concept of really leading by example. Like, we want our employees, those who are under us, those who we oversee, to respond in certain ways because they leave us and may have to interact with other people, right? And so the example that we set in leadership is so powerful, us understanding the responsibility that we have, because as we talked about many times on the show, God has entrusted these people to us. So it would be very easy for us to act as though we are just responsible for ourselves. But when you step into the role of leadership, you take on a totally different responsibility. You're not just responsible for yourself anymore. You're responsible for everyone who's under you because they're watching you. And we know that they're going to take more from us, from what they see, than what we tell them. So we might tell them they should conduct themselves a certain way, but what are you doing when this situation happens? Are you flying off the handle? Are you, getting so angry that you can't control yourself, but you're telling me that I need to act a certain way? And we know that people respect us for that, even when you have to correct the situation, because that's another important thing to understand, that as Christians, and this conversation happens a lot, people think that because we respond a certain way, that means that we're pushovers, that means that we don't handle the situation. That's not what that means, because it takes more strength to stop and control yourself and to choose how do you respond than it does to fly off the handle. And that doesn't mean that correction doesn't happen, because we know correction is necessary, right? And we have talked about the times where you have to correct the situation, but it's the way you do it. So even in the correction, people still respect you afterwards, because the way that you corrected them in love. You corrected them the way that God commands for us to. Because as Christians, we operate by a different set of rules. And that's really, really important when we think about going into the world. And again, back to that question about being the salt and the light. That's what differentiates who we are compared to the rest of the world, is that we show up differently. We respond differently. We interact differently, because we understand that it's bigger than us. We understand that not only are our workers, or employees, or however the term is, our teammates or team members, not only are they people, that they're a soul, right? And it would be awful, and we hit on this before, for someone to be getting ready to come to God, to be getting ready to come to church, to be getting ready to change their lives, and then they show up, and oh my goodness, this is my supervisor that cussed me out last night, and now he's running the audio board, or whatever the case. Or I mentioned in the episode last time, I had a situation with the employee where I had to correct her behavior, and she acted in a way that was not respectful, but I kept myself together. And then a few months later, she showed up at church. I'm singing on the choir, like I'm out in front. What would it have done if I would have responded to her the same way that she responded to me? And so really being mindful of that, I think that is so powerful in those spaces. And so to continue with this conversation, is there an example, and again, not to use names or anything, but just a general example, where someone did come at you a certain way and you had to correct the situation, and what did happen in that process before, and whether it was that they were cussing at you, or they, whatever the case may be, what switch had to be kind of hit for you to be able to respond in that moment in a way that you could be proud of and not ashamed?
Well, let me sit up on this one. All right. So this happens, sad to say, but often in my field. And like I said, I think it's more so because of the type of setting, the atmosphere that, of course, that I work in. Like for one, people don't take into consideration that you're working at night. That right there, just that alone. You're away from family in the daytime, get that sleep. You're working at night, which your body's not accustomed to naturally. So, and then you have life outside of where you work, right? So it's been different situations where I had to sit down and write up pretty fully, um, and I can just go off of that. In different times where I had to speak to them in a way, and of course they're not in the right mind frame or in the right light because all right, you're writing me up for the thing that I did wrong, right? So of course where we do those interview processes where we stated that all right, this is what is about to go down. You're supposed to conduct yourself in the type of way that each other speak, give your reasons, going over the following questions, and respond, respectfully, and we just move forward from that point. So, and we're definitely just dealing with knowing what they feel like at the time. As far as when we're going over those questions and knowing that you already kind of have an idea of what the answers is, but knowing that at the same time that they did something wrong. So they might not feel like talking to you at that moment. They might feel like not saying it because they know where it's leading up to, right? So, and I guess that's more of a control setting because we put it up front to like, all right, this is how you conduct yourself in this interview process. But like I've had situations on the floor where conversations with two different employees. One's going off, the other one's starting to build up, and you can see it. Just having that discernment on how to walk and approach that matter. And for me, I pray the spirit just before I even approach that to know that all right, they have two different personalities or they clash in a certain situation, and to know that they might be going off, but just to know how to respond and say, all right, I need you to calm down, break them up, move forward. All right, we're gonna go speak and get those statements, go from here, and just how to handle them in a way to know that all right, I'm not penalized because I don't know what the situation because I just walked into it, but we're gonna get to the bottom of this, and I want to also in the back of my mind, I want to give you advice on how to handle this the next time. So, not letting them just be handled in the way that I'm going to, you know, punish you, or recommend you, but also giving you some sound advice. All right, what made you go to this route? What can I do on the back end for me to help you? So if you're working in a different department or you're out in the street or where to conduct yourself in a better way or how to dial back or not let somebody bring you up to that point because it's been times to where um, I've had to deal with that on my end, um, all the way from management down to the employees on how to just take the time on hearing myself is like, all right, you know what you're doing right now, Trey. So, all right, take it easy. Just talk to them, get them calm in the matter, to give them more of an understanding of why this is happening why they might feel this way, and how can we move forward from here to make things better. And that's a lot of the times how my approach is when it comes to these type of situations. So that's normally how I go about it. And I think, like I said, it's happened so often. I'm kind of just it's just how I flow. But I try to speak from the heart and have sound advice to try to give them in those moments and even after those moments. And then checking on them later. It's not a bad thing either. Just to see because you never know what they might be dealing with. I talk to other supervisors about this all the time. You never know, and I'm telling you, in the field that I work in, I've dealt with all types of situations you never even think that is happening outside of the workspace. So it could be just them dealing with that one issue and coming to work that night or that day, and they came to work. Well, mind you, they came to work, but their feelings, their emotions, their heartaches, family dilemmas, their job dilemmas, all the other pressures that might come, financial things, even their mental. And that's another key thing, their mental. Um, what could be uh, bothering them? What could be affecting them outside of the workspace and in the workspace? So you got to consider all these things on how you just handle um, employees as a leader. It's just key.
Yeah, a lot of good nuggets. I think that one key thing that you discussed is really, showing up with this compassion and this understanding. I also think that everything that you said really leads back to this concept of you operating according to purpose, because it's very obvious that you are a light in the space that you're in, and that you are training other people to handle things differently. And I think that sometimes that's the piece of leadership that people leave out, because people get really caught up on this title of leader. Well, understanding that you should be leaving people better when you leave them, they should be better than they were when you got there. They should know something that they didn't know before. Because our jobs as leaders, we are planted in these spaces, operating according to purpose, being a light, but also that light should be contagious. Like when we think about it, I think about, our bishop just preached a message about this. When light enters into darkness, the darkness immediately flees. And it's not just like a little speck, right? Like it clears out the whole area. So we think about that same concept when we're thinking about us being leaders and being planted in certain spaces. Everybody that is around us should be impacted by the light that we bring. And so every time you're talking to someone about, you could have handled this differently, or, maybe you should think about it this way next time, or maybe you got to control your emotions in this because you don't want to lose your job. You don't want to, kind of giving some insight into how shifting their perspective and their approach to certain things will make their lives better, is you leaving that nugget. And we talk about a lot of times as leaders, we plant a seed. We might not necessarily see that seed grow in the time that we're there. You may shift into a whole nother position, but something that you left behind in that space, that light that you left, will continue to grow, because then they're going to remember, hey, that one time I had a supervisor named Trumane, and he taught me this. And then they teach the next person and the next person. They might take it to, their friends or their cousin or their child or whatever the case may be. And so understanding the responsibility that we have as leaders, that we always have to think about the fact that it's bigger than us. And so when exactly, because we've kind of had this conversation, but when exactly was it clear to you that you were in this space? Because I know personally that it has not always been easy to be in the role that you're in. That you were there according to purpose. This is where God had placed you at that time. And that you had a responsibility that was so much bigger than just collecting a paycheck and just being there.
So in the position that I hold now, I I actually, I'm trying to figure out how to put it. I knew it was important. Um, just how to, I guess, walk and respond and just be in the right headspace, just you know that you're going into this space right here. So it's right, it's constantly meditating, praying, and making sure that I'll be the best person I can be when I do get to the floor. And I never considered this at first, but I mean, it was something as small as just saying hi to everybody. And I don't know if everybody knows for me doing that. I think that's like a quiet hidden thing, but I know over the years that was something authentic to me that I just speak to everybody. Just what's going on? Hey, how you doing, man? How you doing today? Hey, you tell me about how did that go? Blah blah blah. And that's what I um, just became accustomed to that. Because that was just me. So knowing that I would be in a space that wasn't as welcoming, being that light to say, all right, let me handle things this way. Let me try to change the narrative for me. Not everybody first, but for me, because I know what I see on a day to day basis in those workspaces. When I make those changes, and I know what I would love, I know it will work out for the rest of the business out there with. So just being just comfortable in doing the right thing, seeking advice on how to handle matters. Um, and a lot of it was not just on the floor, but outside. Or, you know, or just getting sound advice on how to be a better leader. Um, Reading about it, talking to mentors, watching. Just like Richard says, caught, being taught. So this observing. I always, if I didn't know any better, I think that was the first thing I felt that was like a gift to me that I actually, excuse me, that I actually observed others. So using those things to learn how to navigate and make better decisions off of what I watched somebody else do, how they handle matters, how they responded, how the other person responded to them, what they said. All right, this is a personality that I might deal with later on down the road. So, and it all kind of did a full circle. Everything is fixed. Like I said, I did it. 17, so you can imagine that. How many personalities I come across. And how many paths that they have women that may, I guess, alter how they handle themselves in the workspace. So just having that discernment on how to um, be kind, even when matters are out of hand for them, maybe not for me, but for them, and and just saying, all right, this is how we're going to handle it, and taking control in a sense without telling them that you're taking control because um, you, like you said, being that light is a very important thing. I guess you could say in and off the field. So, and I think that's just something that you should always take into consideration when it comes to just being I don't want to say being authentic or being real, but because I don't think of it that way. It's just who I am. Just who I am. And I think a lot of times for me, I consider it as serving others in a way. So serving them in a way to helping them get through their day, get through their night, get through those 8, 10, 12 hours, maybe 14. You just might not even know it. Because they might have a job after they leave from the workspace that you're going to do that. I have voices like that. So just being open to not being that mean, um, you know, not considerate person, that caring person. It's just, I think I don't think of it as being important. I just do because I understand. I understand because I was there. I was there. I've been in situations, had those days, those nights. All right, I'm gonna be here right now. This is going on outside of the workspace. All right, let me let me get myself together and all right, let's handle this right here. And like I said, that's just a key thing for me to just dwell on. Even when I'm in those spaces, it's key that we do.
Yeah, that's so important as well, is to really consider, um, you know, what kind of leader will we want to follow. And so when we're thinking about how we show up as leaders, are we showing up as the type of people that we ourselves would want to follow? And we have to be very, very cognizant of the importance of that question for us. So you hit on a lot of really, really amazing things, and I think that one thing that you hit on towards the end was about you've experienced the opposite. You've experienced people who didn't necessarily lead the way that you lead, and who have not always created spaces that you wanted to be there. We're not always considerate about how their attitude and their disposition impacted the next person. And that did kind of motivate you to decide what kind of leader you wanted to be as well. So this next question really gets to the heart of, when we think about showing up authentically, we also have to think about what things do we have to let go of in order for that to happen. So, are there any things or habits or ways of doing things that you had to on this journey? Because you said this has been about a 10-year journey in your leadership capacity, that you had to let go of, that you had to identify, this is not serving me or the people that I am overseeing well. I need to kind of put this to the side, that has led to you being who you are today.
So first thing that comes to mind, in my situation, due to me working night shift, is sleep. And I can say that again, sleep, right? That's one key thing because if your mind's not there, uh, it's definitely it'll throw everything off. It'll throw everything off. And praying, meditating, those things I had to add in. Just let me say that those things I had to add in. The things I might have to take away. Hmm, I guess I could say I think I would, I guess, first thing I think of is that it was at a time that not allowing certain music, not listening to certain music, not letting certain voices come. And then not just music. movies, friends, I guess in a sense, or not even just people I'm associated with. Keeping myself away from those type of environments. Just to those type of shifts I had to make to keep my heart clean, uh, keep my gates clean, ear gates, eye gates, all those things. So just even that, even that. So when yeah, even that, because you might not have the best leadership, and they might not see things the way you do. They might not handle things the way you do. So staying away from those type of negative influences. So and it's just those different things you have to be on guard about. To guard your heart, and and it's helping keep yourself pure, sanctified, you know, just in the righteous mindset. Because it might seem small then, and I gotta stop doing that. But then over time, it will definitely show because you attach to different people and their spirits, how their opinions and how they feel about certain things that you might not even consider it at first, but then you hear how they, oh, okay, but not not allowing God in first, but you allowing them in first. So it's been all kinds of things like that, especially as a leader. It's important because you are responsible for those that's under you. And I think probably 2 weeks to a month ago that I thought about that. I was on my working for, and I'm all right. Let me look at the people, the person that I'm over. It's like a branch in a way. The branch starts off with just that one long piece, but then the branches break off and spread. So the break off and spread would be their children, the job, their side business, their social life, their religion, um, their problems, their issues. What are you contributing to that? Are you helping that? Or are you hindering things? Are you bolting things? Are you helping them to evolve to be a better person in these other lights because of what you showed them in that 8 to 16 hours that you're with them? And I'm guessing 16 can't do that. But however long that you're with them on those days that you work with them, what are you contributing? Because they might be handled in a way outside of that space, and it's not loving, caring, understanding. But are you doing that? Are you compassionate? Are you showing that light, the love of God when you are around them? And they might not even be used to it. They might not even seen it before. You would be definitely surprised if you know the type of lives that people live outside of the workspace. So not just that they matter, you know, and not just with just controlling of the situations as being a leader and a guide, safety, keeping them safe. They're in your space. They're, you know, in a way saying blood is on your hands. Might not think of it that way, but for real, like, like, you know, spiritually and naturally, they're under your care. They're not your children. They're not your spouse, but they're somebody that's under your care at the time. So how do you handle
Yeah, that's good. That's your assignment, right? But when we talk about purpose and how seriously we take that. And I truly believe when we talk about on the show, God holds us responsible for how we treat the people that He has given to us. From, you know, we talk about as women, you know, leaders, our leadership capacity starts in the home, right? So we are leaders as far as our children go, and of course, husbands, fathers are the head of the household. So there are different dynamics in that. But we often think about like our children being our responsibility, right? So God has gifted them to us, and we need to handle them a certain way. But do you think about it the same way when you're thinking about if God has allowed you to be, to oversee a certain area, to be a leader in that area, pay attention to how we handle His people? Because whether the people on the job are Christians or not, they're still God's people. He created them. So that is still our responsibility. And a lot of people, I think, in leadership don't think about it that way. And again, we talked about on the show a lot of times about how people treat people on the jobs. Are you, and you kind of hinted to this, you know, are you being nasty? Are you being hateful? Are you the type of person that throws people under the bus or is very vindictive? Like, what is, how you conduct yourselves? You're still being watched. And the one thing that bothers me to my core is for someone to show up and say that they're a Christian leader, but their actions do not demonstrate that. Because, like you said, people are watching. The minute you tie that title of being a Christian onto your whatever you're doing, people are automatically like, oh, but you're supposed to be different. Like they can go off and do it, but you're supposed to be different. You're not supposed to act that way. And then there are some people who have learned that it's some Christians that treat you worse than people that are, you know, in the streets or people who don't claim to be Christians, and that pushes people away. And I definitely think that's the reason why God really does hold us accountable, because He's like, you're turning people away from you. Your job should be that when you are in this space, no matter how you show up, that people should be drawn to God because you are there. People should say, like, there is something different about you, Trumane. There is something different about you, ChèRee. I want whatever that is. They might not even know it. And like you said, you don't have to walk around with a sign on, your cross chain, your cross necklace, your cross earrings. You don't have to do all that. People will see something different about you and say, I don't know what it is about you. It's something about your personality, it's something about your spirit, it's something just about, I feel at peace. I remember when I was in the classroom, I used to have students that would often be like, I want to come in here. They didn't know why. They didn't know that, you know, prayer happened before they got in there. They didn't know all the things that occurred to set the atmosphere in that place. Just like you talking about you praying, you're setting the atmosphere. You don't have to stand up and holler and sit on top of a chair and, you know, speak in tongues or whatever the case may be, but you bring in a different atmosphere that then shifts, that people can feel even they don't know exactly what that is. So I'm really just energized by this conversation, and I think it's really important for the women leaders who do watch this podcast to understand that you as a man are also operating according to purpose in that space. And I think a lot of times women think that men don't go through the same types of things. We experience life in a different way, right? We experience what we're dealing with in a different way because, again, being a woman That's its own thing. Women and men were created differently. But it also shows that you are doing a lot of the same things that we have talked about before on the show. That's just important when we talk about leadership across the board, whether you are a male or a female. And you brought out a lot of different points about how you are comfortable showing up as yourself, and you've learned the power of that. And that's one thing that I want to encourage to all the women who do watch the podcast, is to understand that your greatest gift, and Trumane hit on this many times throughout this episode, is you being you. You cannot be anybody else. God did not create you to be anybody else. You are needed in the capacity that you show up in. And what happens a lot of times is that because we are not sure of ourselves, we have not found our identity. And you talked about this a lot as well, is about your connection with God helps you to create an identity that then you can walk in confidently. And so for the people listening, whether you're male or female, understanding that it all comes back to a relationship with God, because that is the only way for you to really develop true identity and get to know yourself in an authentic way, to be authentically you, because we don't know who we are until we develop that relationship. I remember, when I first started in leadership, it was so much uncertainty because I didn't know what it was supposed to look like. And I had lots of examples, different women in different leadership capacities, but they did things differently. My mother was a leader. She does leadership her way. My grandmother was a leader. She did leadership her way. I had other people that were my bosses and mentors and managers. They led the way that they saw that. And so it was really a internal conflict about, well, who should I be like? Right? Should I be like my grandma? Should I be like my mom? Should I be like, my very first boss, who I'll always remember when I went into education? She was amazing, but should I show up as her? And what I had to find out over time, and again, that you hit on several times throughout this episode, is that I couldn't be anybody but me. And when I look at my leadership style, I took a little piece of what I saw, and then I put my own little sprinkle on. Because anybody who's ever interacted with me, whether it's leadership or they were one of my students, knows it's only one me. Like I tell this all the time, like, take it or leave it. Either you love me or you don't, and that if you don't, that's on you. But there's only one me. But I had to find my own flow and be in my own skin. And now I can do what I do on a regular basis because I understand the importance of that. And so the last thing that I just would like for you to hit on is, what advice would you give someone who's just starting out on this leadership journey and is trying to find themselves in this flow to get to a place where they're comfortable with being who God created them
to be? Breathe. It's gonna be all right. You're going to add adversity that you're going to deal with your own personal self, other leaders. You might have other leaders that don't agree with how you lead. And they might not have the patience because they might have led longer. Take your time in understanding the people that you serve, those that you're over, even the ones that you're not over, because in a way you're serving them as well. They might not say it, but you're serving them as well because they're watching you. Even how you respond to the leaders, management, your manager, other supervisors, higher management. Just take your time. And I've always thought to just learn the people. Learn their ways, their cultures, because you know how best to get them to how to reach them, and what they need and what you need to as well. Take your time. You'll find your ways on how to correct things, to hear on how to handle things. You just take your time. And for those that are not believers, I can say just roundabout, just take your time. For those that are believers, pray, meditate, seek Holy Spirit. I'm sure he says that in public. In public, I'm constant, constant. And I've learned to do that even more and more and more and more and more. I was not originally there. But at the end of the day, if you don't know how to do it, under your breath, just whatever it is, how you go about it. Getting in a routine of it before you step into those atmospheres, into different situations. Because ultimately, we put you there for a reason, but you're supposed to be him on earth, right? He's using you as a vessel. So allow him to use you. Be open. Because it might be situations with you. It will be. You'll be tested. You'll be vulnerable. But definitely just for believers. And even also non-believers. So I pray that you get there. Because it's necessary. Especially in this day and time. Where it's getting close. It's getting tight. See God. So many leaders, scriptures in the Bible, and God has revealed that to me over the past couple years. And I so appreciate that because I didn't know which way to go. How to go about it. But reading those different books in the Bible and learning how those leaders led. I think about who lead kingdoms. Not your department, not your unit, not your facility, kingdoms. But what do? They seek God. They seek God. So you do the matter. Take your time, listen, seek advice, get a mentor that you bring. Observe. So stays open into this.
Well, thank you so much. I know that those who are watching will be blessed by this particular episode. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for showing up authentically. This conversation has been amazing, and I know that it was meant to happen. We know that a lot of things had to happen for us to get here, but it was definitely meant to happen. As always, sincerely appreciate you taking out your time to sit and listen to us, to just share these moments with us as the podcast audience, for all of your support. Remember, especially if you're new here, subscribe, like, and share, and we will see you next time.